Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for attending our virtual event dedicated to empowering financial services. My name is Jeroen Nederkoorn. I'm Territory Manager at Inova Solutions, and I'm responsible for the West Indies territory, with the exception of Jamaica and Puerto Rico, where we have dedicated country managers. My roots lie in the Netherlands, as you may have recognized from my name, but I've been living in Curaçao for almost 18 years now. Feel free to have a blast pronouncing my full name, and I do appreciate the efforts. But just so you know, most native English-speaking colleagues and customers call me Jay, so feel free to do the same. Last year, I celebrated my 10th anniversary at Inova, and it has been quite a journey. 10 years ago, we had a strong focus on licensing solutions for large enterprises in the West Indies. And this is something we still do a lot. But as the IT landscape changed drastically in the recent years, Inova has also seen its transformation to a full cloud solution provider, a title from Microsoft we had already gotten back in 2015. This is me celebrating on the photo. My colleagues threw me a surprise party with balloons and cake and what have you. I would like to take this moment to not only thank everyone attending this virtual event, but to also express my sincerest gratitude to our clients. Thank you so much for your continuing business with us. Your loyalty means everything to our company, because without you, there would not even be an Inova. These are challenging times for most of us. During this past year, this pandemic has taken a toll on most individuals and companies. For me personally, this meant that I was not able to visit our customers on a frequent basis as I did in the recent years. I have not left the island since April, while I used to be on the road about half of my time. I do trust, however, this will return at some point, and I will be able to visit you again, hopefully somewhere soon in 2021. The measures that were taken due to the pandemic also meant we were not able to deliver on-site seminars and workshops like we did over the past 10 years. We organize these events as it's part of our core beliefs, our core values at Inova, that we are up close and personal with you, our customers and prospects. And allow me to elaborate a bit more on these four core values we live by. We want to bring you content on the latest and greatest of what Microsoft has to offer, and to share our experiences in this region, as we believe there are factors that make our economies and businesses different. This is not only from a cultural standpoint, there's also example the differences when operating in small economies or working with smaller budgets, and challenges like attracting knowledgeable resources or perhaps having to deal with a different internet infrastructure on the island or particular local legislations. These factors define the region in an important way, and at Inova we recognize this because our organization was founded in the Caribbean. This is why we believe that we have a thorough understanding of our customers' concerns and considerations, or factors that may block or delay change, and other aspects that affect the decision-making process. So in order to provide our customers with the best possible professional care, we set high standards for our staff. To guarantee this professional level, everyone who joins or works for Inova in a customer-facing position must have elementary knowledge of the Microsoft Cloud offerings. So we are required to pass at least the Microsoft 365 and the Azure Fundamental exams. And it does not stop there, as anyone is encouraged to pass more exams frequently by allowing each individual 4 hours of study time per week. I myself am now studying for Power Platform Fundamentals, as I'm taking a big interest in Power BI, which is a powerful tool for analyzing big data, and I have a lot of that. So it would be my next obvious exam to take. These exams are valid for only 2 years, so you can imagine we have to refresh our knowledge a lot. But as a side note, and our colleagues are going to address this as well, if you are in a role that somehow gets involved with the cloud journey of your organization, we strongly recommend doing the M365 and Azure Fundamental courses. These are free self-paced courses on Microsoft.com/learn, and for about $99 you can also do the exam if you want to show off the certification on LinkedIn, for example. The fourth core value we identify ourselves by is flexibility. And this goes beyond the obvious, not to have a 9-to-5 mentality we would expect from the Inova team. But I will call my mom during work hours and respond to a work email in the evening. But I trust this is becoming more and more normal these days also in your organizations. And let's face it, if you've checked Amazon during the day for a Black Friday deal or browsed Facebook a bit, shouldn't you return the favor and do a quick checkup on urgent emails in the evening or in the weekend? Regardless, for Inova, it also means that we want to try to find a tailored solution for our customers should that be necessary. And yes, over the past years, especially when Inova entered the top 3 Microsoft partners in the region, we had to submit to stricter policies and procedures. But even more reason for having flexibility as one of our core values. Do not forget the flexible approach sometimes can make all the difference. Additionally, it ties back to our core values, being personal and regional. Now, let's talk about why we're here all today. As I mentioned, we used to do seminars and workshops on site all the time, but we now switched gears to deliver this content virtually. This virtual event is specifically designed to address financial services in the West Indies. And I'm saying it like this because I think that if you would Google cloud computing consideration for financial markets, you would be able to find tons of information already. And sure, we're going to address some of that too, but why we think today is relevant for you is that we will address concerns from financial institutions in the West Indies. And I mentioned before, in many ways, our markets are different than the mainstream Western Europe or North American ones. Local infrastructure may demand a distinctive design. For example, if you feel that the connectivity is not reliable enough or not fast enough, and are you then going to be looking at hybrid solutions or only workloads that are not that delay sensitive? And what if your company policies or local legislation prohibits storage of data on foreign soil or data stored in the US, but it does not meet your own country's standards of privacy protection? This last one is an actual example of an objection we learned from one of our government customers. And so these are all factors that we want to address today. In addition, there is an acceleration of cloud adoption we have seen since March 2020. As COVID-19 is not only a health crisis, but also affecting economies worldwide, and particularly in countries here in the West Indies, where tourism is a major source of income, and that has hit hard by lockdowns and curfews. So we have noticed 2 side effects. First is that organizations everywhere were forced to facilitate their staff to be able to work from home and to allow those employees to communicate effectively. And in the beginning, many have resorted to Zoom for a while, but with the rising security concerns of Zoom and the fact that Microsoft provided a free 180 days trial for Teams, many organizations chose MS Teams to be their collaboration and conferencing platform. For many of these organizations, that automatically meant the first step to the cloud, and they are now in the process of defining the next steps to continue this journey. A second side effect is that the pandemic also brought out the need for organizations to be able to respond faster to changing environments, to become more agile. The sad truth is that many organizations had to downsize in staff, but their IT spending was not able to downsize in the same way. They still had to write off the hardware and software that was bought the years before, regardless of the changes in the organization. And so we now see customers already rehiring, which is great, but it's also a clear sign that there is a demand for more scalable and faster scalable IT. So it is imperative that we keep seeking new opportunities to make our organizations more agile and more effective, to be able to respond quicker to changing situations. Cloud computing has proven to give organizations that edge, to be faster and more flexible in deploying new applications and solutions, and scaling up and down when the situation demands it, in both workloads and staff. This also means that there is a rising demand for IT as operational expense, meaning companies only pay for the service they consume instead of capital expenses, the classic CAPEX versus OPEX shift. A way Inova is offering this is through our customer portal. Via this portal, our customers are managing their subscriptions how they see fit, adding or removing subscriptions at any given time and getting billed accordingly, exactly for what is consumed. Now, should you be interested to learn more about our portal, we can always provide a demo to show you the functionality in more detail. Just let me know after the event. So we believe that we do not have to focus too much on the why of cloud, as I'm sure that you are all convinced of that already. We already know what the advantages of the cloud are and the ways your organization can benefit from those. We think it's now key to discuss the roadmap to cloud, and particularly discuss concerns that are typical for our markets, as I mentioned before. We've selected some topics that we think will be of interest to you. So today you will learn from modern workplace expert from Microsoft, who will be sharing his thoughts from a user standpoint. And also we will be addressing the customer facing side of things, your customer that is. Is your organization taking advantage of the digital transformation your clients are going through, particularly in this region? Are you aligned with those customers? And how do you present yourself online? Of course, we could not discuss cloud computing in financial services without addressing security. Across the industry, we use the term zero trust, meaning that per default, we assume breach and constantly checking user identities. Think of things like multi-factor authentication. So that is also coming up. And to add even more excitement to this day and closing it off with a bang, we will do a knowledge check with a pop quiz, so you can all demonstrate what you have learned today. All right, leaves me to thank you once more, and I do hope you will enjoy our virtual event today.
That was the feed. So let me now then introduce you to our next speaker, Mr. Frederico Muller. Frederico is from Microsoft, been a consultant in the business for over 20 years and has a vast experience in digital transformation processes, and currently is in a role to aim at transforming the workspace by adopting strategies and technologies focused on productivity. A great asset for our event today. Federico, if you please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. I'm really excited to be here sharing with your customer, Inova customer, and talking about the opportunities and challenges that bring the clouds to the financial services. And when see what we are seeing in the Caribbean about adoption in the cloud computing services. Okay, I want to start talking a little bit about an inflection point in my presentation. They talk about my experience, so I don't want to talk about that again. So I'm going to go faster to my point. And the first thing that I want to talk, I don't know if you're seeing my screen or is moving my screen. Okay, I want to confirm that. Just I'm going to start again. Okay, sorry. Okay, so I want to start telling a story, an inflection point that so many of you remember in the Caribbean. Was more or less 4 years ago when we have Irma hits the Caribbean. A lot of islands in the Caribbean was affected by the hurricane, and a lot of damage in the areas. Many of you remembers the situation that has or the island in the Caribbean in many ways. But 2 weeks after this event, we have another situation with Maria. And Maria impacted more maybe Puerto Rico and a lot of islands in the east in the Caribbean, and the impact is very, very awful. It's terrible that what happens to all the people in many countries. And for us, that was an inflection point. A lot of things played a role in the basic necessity of the people. And we saw many industries play a starring role, a principal role in the recovery, in the basic recovery of the people. We see construction as a big role in the recovery. We see how supply chain about food and other things play a big role in this situation. But other industries that have great role and a very high demand in this case was financial services. And financial services need to supply money for the people, money in cash, money to transact, to buy basic things. So they play a role, very important role in the recovery in this process. And some banks have many issues trying to bring back the services. And everybody knows in this kind of disaster, it's very difficult to recover because nobody is prepared. Including we do a lot of things for that, but nobody is prepared for that. And I want to park this story here to go to another one. Before COVID or before that, after that is the digital transformation too. We have a lot of pressure as a financial services in the digital transformation scope because there is a lot of new innovations, a lot of new experience in customers, and we see how companies that doesn't have a car are the biggest taxi company. We start to see the fintech making pressure in the financial services to bring new experience. And we saw, for example, loans and credit like Zebra, banking like Robinhood, that are creating new experience for financial services, for example. No, we see that companies or banks that doesn't have branch, and we see in our countries that the regulation try to contain or constrain this kind of banks, but sometimes it's going to be in our region. Sometimes we are going to have banks that disrupt the industry, and we will need to transform as fast as they are, and this is going to be a big challenge for banking. We are seeing a lot of disruption in the banking on the financial services area, like intelligent automation, productivity decision, mobility analytics for customer, new branches and ATMs, real-time marketing. A lot of innovation is coming to and is flowing to banks. And sometimes we ask, okay, I cannot go as fast as the technology goes, but your customer is going fast. Your customer experience is asking for you that going fast, and this is a challenge that we have today. But I want to park this story to talk about another one today, COVID, and COVID changed everything. Today we are fighting with a pandemic too. This brings another challenge to the financial services, is survival. A lot of companies is closing today. A lot of companies is trying to reduce costs, trying to stay healthy, and we are generating a lot of pressure here. But there is a lot of opportunity too. A lot of banks is changing the experience, saying, okay, I want to try to move all my process to cloud, to internet, to mobile experience. So there is a big competition today in the experience area and in the digital transformation too, because it's survival today. And we have in 3 months, 2 months, the digital transformation that we don't have in years in banking, and this is something that is impacting to customers today. And we have a change in the model today. We have home delivery for everything. We have remote sales. We have new shopping experience. We are having virtual events today. I would love to go to any place to give this event today and see you in face to face. But we are doing virtual today, and we are having telemedicine, remote work, remote development, remote everything. This is the new concept that we have today. And many of this remote work or remote everything is going to stay. Many of the leaders in the financial services industry doesn't believe in this kind of remote everything or remote work. They doesn't believe in have the people in his home working and being productive from his home. But today they see it works, and it's cheaper sometimes. And a lot of jobs is going to stay remote. And this is a new challenge for IT, for security, for process in companies. That brings a lot of challenge about collaboration, how the people collaborate, how the people access to the applications, or how the people can reach remotely to customers, and including how the people keep information safe. For example, a few days ago, I was talking to a customer in banking that they say me, I want you provide me phone services using Teams, and we provide him phone services using Teams, but they have an issue, and they don't want that the people see the cell phone of the agents, calling customers. And they use Teams to call customers, but they want that the phones that the people see is the main phone of the company. They are working from home, and we care about the privacy of the person, and we care about the personal information of the person. So they use Teams to call customers, but they want they just only to hide the personal number of the people in the company. And there is a lot of challenge here, including the challenge in the leadership corporation that sometimes doesn't believe in this kind of transformation today. The other thing, and you see before that in the presentation before me, that other thing that we have as a concern is security. Security today, we have an increment of bad factors in the security scope, and the security is getting complex for the different. We have concerns about defending our solution. We have more risk because we are moving from money to data, and we have today we have more regulation and more strict regulation from our countries and outside of our countries, like GDPR or other regulation that are impacting our business. And this is a big challenge today in the security area. We have maybe this kind of infrastructure. We use wall to protect our banks, but we cannot protect the new infrastructure today because we don't know where is the infrastructure. And this is the challenge that we are having today about that. And another challenge is about how much cost an attack. It's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And you see metadata here in my screen when you can see, okay, some people can buy a 0-day attack with 60K, 180K average. It's very cheap to buy a 0-day attack. Or you can buy a ransomware for 66 or 30% of the profit. It's very, very cheap. And you can buy PCs compromised in botnets in 3 cents. It's very, very, very cheap today to have or execute an attack for customer, but it's very expensive to defend our infrastructure. You see that today, maybe many of you expense more than 1,000 per user a year in security for your users. That's very expensive. But security is becoming a CEO, COO top of mind or concern today, because maybe security is a blocker for the business today, and we need to stay secure, but we need to move the business. Today, security is becoming a high expense for the companies too. Today, our partners need to have the same security that we have. Today, the teams are mobiles, the teams work from home. Today, we need to be compliant with the regulation and the government. So security is becoming a top of mind in every corporation and more in the financial services. So it's very, very important today that the security about in the financial services. If you see, maybe more of the 90% data is created in the last 2 years. So financial services is becoming a data company, not a money company sometimes. You see that many times you have a lot of security products to stay secure. And this is a challenge that we have to we are having today, and we are having today many challenges about the people that we can get to work in security. We are a lack, or we have a shortage of professional in security today, and you see, and this number is very high today. That this is 60% of the responding of the last survey that say that they need people in security today, and you see that a lot of chief risk officers and board of directors in the banks are worried about security. So security today is very important in the company. So what brings the cloud to help us in these three topics today? First, the cloud can help us to enhance our security, and many CISOs doesn't believe that, because they believe in the model that they think that the things that they see is the one that are protected. But the cloud is going to bring economy to our infrastructure. The cloud is going to bring maybe share responsibility in many basic workloads, and it's going to give me more cheaper solution and more broader solution to have visibility, resilience, and others capabilities that today are required for security. Another thing that is important today in security is that many of the needs that I have about physical security, about data encryption and basic workload is going to be covered by the cloud. Another thing that is important to us is the intelligence. The cloud is collecting a lot of intelligence today, using AI, using big data to create more models to protect. And it's very important that we understand that the hackers are using AI today, and it's the hacker are using, and we are in disadvantage. And this is important that we have this very clear. But transition to the cloud brings many challenges. Maybe some of you have compliance challenge today, or think that privacy and trust is important for you in the cloud. So how you can keep privacy and trust and security and protection. Many of you believe that something is more secure if you have in your box. But something is important that you have clear is the cloud is not secure by default. You need to secure, but you have more controls or more capabilities to secure your data, to have better compliance, to have better security. If you do the right due diligence and you apply the controls, this is important that you keep in mind today. If I retake my first stories, the first one is the story of Maria and Irma, the digital transformation and the COVID response. The companies that used cloud today was better prepared in the three cases to respond better, faster to his customers about security, about digital transformation, about new customer and business agility. And all the customers that use cloud today can respond better for the situation that we are living in this moment. Okay, this is what I want to talk today with you, and I want to you enjoy the content that we are going to bring today, including you're gonna see something about zero trust that is complement this story. You are going to see how security in the cloud is going to strengthen your security today, and something that maybe we cannot achieve if you are using only on-premise products in our infrastructure. Thank you to all, and I'm very happy to be here.
All right, thanks so much, Frederico. Thank you, appreciate it. Well, let's immediately then step forward to our next speaker. On the agenda is Jasper Kraak. Jasper and I go way back, and he, as I mentioned earlier, he joined me on a lot of my visits to customers and countries around the territory. He's probably feeling the same as I do. Can't wait to get back out there again and be on site with customers. Jasper will be addressing an interesting topic that I find interesting. I'm sure you find that too. Is what is your presence online? How do you present yourself to customers? And are you aligned with your customers when it comes to digital transformation? Jasper, if you're ready, please, the floor is yours.
Good morning. I think I'm ready, so I hope you are as well. Frederico, thank you very much. You touched some points where I will continue. What I will continue on, so let's see how that goes. So as Jeroen said, I live on Aruba, and I used to travel a lot together with Jeroen, and now he is stuck on Curacao for 8 months, and I'm stuck on Aruba for 8 months, so we haven't seen each other for quite a while. But hey, that is how it is right now. And especially in these times, online presence, I think it's very relevant for all industry, although we will focus on banking and financial businesses. And I truly believe that everything has to do with trust. So that is what I'm going to drill into a little bit with well. Stay there, and so this is what happens a lot in the Caribbean islands. You know, people spend a full day each month standing in line to pay their utility bills. Sometimes they swipe, or sometimes they first go stand in line at the bank, at the teller, get their cash, and then they take that cash 2 shops down the road to pay that cash to pay their utility bill or whatever bill. And I'm not sure if this is the reason. I know this from some people I know here on Aruba, that people just want to have their invoice stamped and signed. They don't trust a bank statement, and they surely don't trust a bank statement on a PC screen. No, they want to have that stamp and that signature on their invoice, on their bill. And I think clearly that has to do something with trust. They don't trust a bank statement. So, hey, that's something to think about maybe. And now, of course, it's even worse, because now we have to stand in line like this, and it only takes more time. And it's not just 1 line per month, it's like 4, 5, maybe 6 lines per month that you have to stand in like that. And hey, that is not necessary, I believe. It is, but it's again, it's a matter of trust. So let's dig in a little bit into how trust can work. What is trust? Because it's hard to define. You cannot qualify it. It's hard. You can hardly quantify it. So what happens in there? But first of all, the economic cost for all our local economies of all these people standing in lines for hours, that is huge. That is huge. So that is something as a shared responsibility for our economies. Don't waste our time. Don't waste the energy and the time people spend in line. And if we look closer into your own situation as a banker, it is costing you a lot of money as well. Having to fill ATM machines, having your tellers operating in your branch offices, and have them count out the money, and then other people on the other side are counting the money as it comes in from the utility companies. So I think online banking is a very big cost saver as well. It's in your interest. But building trust takes time. It's not going to happen very fast. It's not like, hey, we are your trusted bank, and then everybody says, probably. So the offers that are out there, so that is your online presence, they must be trustworthy somehow. You must make sure that they are trustworthy, so that people can trust a bank statement sitting on a screen. And your offers must be appealing, of course. This is 2020. People live on their mobile device, so it must be available over there, and it must be appealing. People should like to do that, and it must be intuitive and easy. Nobody ever took a training for Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp. Nobody ever took a training, so that's how easy your application, your online presence should be. But we'll go into that further on. So talking about trust. This is a question, and note this question well, because you will be tested later on. Worldwide, what is the safest method of transportation when you look at distance traveled and accidents over a year or over a week? Doesn't really matter. What is by far the safest method of transportation? Think about it for a little bit, but I don't think that, let me see, can people answer that in the chat? No, never mind. We'll come back to that later. So here is the answer. It's the elevator. Elevators are a very, very, very safe means of transportation. Yes, it goes vertically and not horizontally, but hey, you travel, you go up or you go down, and nothing happens ever. And still, what do elevator builders, what do they do? In each and every elevator in a public building, you will see these. Always, you can always check when was this elevator checked. And if you want to have the whole report, there you have it. A copy of the elevator inspection permit is located in the general manager's office. So you make an appointment and you say, I want to see that before I go to the 12th floor in this building. Otherwise, I'll just take the staircase. So even though everybody always goes into an elevator without hesitation because everybody knows that it's a very safe method of transportation, still they put in signs like this. They are there. That is trustworthy. You trust the elevator. And putting up a sign like this will even enhance that emotion of feeling safe. So now let's compare that with, I'm going to do a little test. No, not yet. This is an article I stumbled upon 2 days ago, and I liked the title. We will share the presentation because actually this is a link to the actual article on the site of Tech Republic, and it was about credit card security. So what happens with credit card security is, well, actually hardly anything happens. You know, you can do your thing online with a credit card. You just need a card number, the name on the card, and that CSV code on the back of the card. That's all. And once you fill that out, you're good to go. So that is, and what happens in that industry is the risk is mitigated only by insurances. In other words, hardly anything is done on the actual safety and security of the use of credit cards. It's a calculated risk. Yes, you issue credit cards, and yes, you know that the risk that something will happen with one of those cards is that high, and when it happens, the price will be that high. So we are willing to pay that and that amount of money as an insurance policy. But nothing happens on the actual security of credit cards. It's a calculated risk. But I like the title. It's time for banks to rethink how they secure customer information. Because hey, we're talking about trust here. We're talking about your customer-facing applications and services. And it's about their privacy information, and even more importantly, it's about their money. So I did a little investigation. So this is a screenshot of a online banking in a browser, and I made some things black, but this is how I do that over here. And then I thought, okay, so let's have a look at that. And I retrieved that URL, that address, that HTTP little thing in my browser, and I'm going to ping that. So this is a bit technical, but I'm retrieving the IP address like this. And then there is this great website out there, and you can look up the physical location of IP addresses by country. So that's interesting enough. Of course, there is also a site where you can do it the other way around. So then it's not by country, but it's per IP range, and you can see where that IP range is registered, because that's a deal that all the international internet service providers have. Like, this bunch of IP addresses is for you. You can allocate that amongst your customers. And I found out that my IP address of my bank is on my local island. And then I was like, okay, so there we have it. Is that so I know where it ends up when I type in my financial things in that web application. I know where it's going. And then, is that data center compliant enough? I don't know. I really don't know. There is no sign on the web page of the bank. Nothing. It just says 2012. Okay, so is that data center, is that compliant enough? Because when we look at compliance for data centers, there's a lot of stuff out there. Probably some of you will know some of these external certifications, but there's a whole bunch of different grades when it comes to data centers and security, and what can you run in there and what can you not run in there. So now we go to is your local data center compliant enough to handle all of this, to handle financial data from your customers, with your customers' money and their addresses and their phone numbers and what have you? So again, there is no signs on that website. Compare that with that little elevator pitch that I just gave you. In every elevator, you will find that thing. On banking websites, I don't see it. Yes, I can check the certificate, but that's about it. That's the only thing I can check. So now let's have a look at Azure. So that's the Microsoft Cloud. And probably this is an old slide, and probably this is, they cover more than 53 compliance offerings, but as a shared responsibility, as the previous speaker said, in cloud computing, there is a shared responsibility. Some of the responsibility lies with the vendor of the cloud services, and you have your own responsibility in doing the proper configuration of that. But in the basics, what you find with a cloud provider like Microsoft Azure, in the basics, you can never beat this. These are all regional, global, horizontal, vertical, you name it. Their data centers are certified by external certification authorities to run specific services. That does not mean that by default, as soon as you deploy something on there, it's secure. No, that's the shared responsibility model. You have to do something in there as well. So what are your options when we're talking about very simple web applications, your online banking system? Well, you could just consider some things, because I know that there is issues with putting data in a public cloud. That's a normal conversation we have. But how about putting the web front end on Azure? Just the front end, not the back end, just the front end. Then you will come into that later on. You have all the benefits of creating great user experiences and the data just flows back to your data center. But initially, you have the best of both worlds, and then include some of those verifiable security guarantees, like my elevator pitch. Put something on your website that says, hey, we are blah, blah, blah compliant. We are blah, blah, blah compliant. That only makes sense. I would like to see that as a client, as a customer. And then later on, hey, you can put your transaction tiers in Azure and your databases in Azure once all the compliance and regulations are satisfied. You can transform the whole workload into a cloud native app, meaning it is designed for running in a cloud environment. And as I said in the previous slide, in current data centers, you can never reach the level of security integrity on legacy systems that are now available in the cloud. That is going to cost you way too much money if you would ever try to do that in your local data center. So I call it here, move away from legacy by default unsecure systems. So let's move on. I have 9 minutes left. I see a little clock ticking. So another thing in your online presence to customers is we still suffer from something that has been going on now for 20, 25 years. I've been around in the industry for 30 years now. And you know, it is funny that it still works like that. You know, some sites or apps, they look great, but they don't work. They are appealing, but they don't work. And some sites and apps work great, but they look terrible. They look appalling. So is it appalling or appealing? And the reality is, and these are some screenshots from a mobile device and from a banking application. And sorry, but I call this appalling. It might work, that's fine, but it looks like, yeah, let's open that app and have some fun. You know, I'm going to transfer some money. Oh, yippee! Yes, that's gonna be exciting. No, not really. So this looks. For me, this is appalling. The same applies for the previous screenshot of this website. It's like, you know, there's nothing there. It works, so the functionality is there, apart maybe from the security features, which we don't know, but it doesn't look like a modern app. So focus on your online presence. What does it look like? What is the look and feel of your online presence for your customers? So these are some screenshots from banking apps where I think, yeah, well, hey, that looks interesting enough. They are colorful. They have some nice graphics in there, a little bit like tiles. It's easy to click on. You know, this is what a modern app looks like. I'm not going back to the previous slide to make the comparison, but just keep this in your mind. This is what it should look like, and it must be user-friendly and intuitive and easy to use, and of course safe and secure. So again, how do you build that? If I look at traditional data centers and web applications and stuff like that, even making a tiny change in an application can take like 3 months. You know, everything has to be tested and things will break and it is not compatible or blah, blah, blah. If we look at the modern way of app deployment, then you can be up and running in no time, and changes with technologies like CI/CD pipelines on Azure, they make a very smooth developer's experience, and it allows for a very short delivery times. And you leverage the security features available on Azure that you do not have yourself. So the security is built in if your developers use the tools to deploy their web applications on Azure. They are built into the platform. They are built into the whole ecosystem on how modern deployment of applications on Azure work. So everything you want to do with Agile and Scrum and DevOps, all the words that all the nice little abbreviations that you find out there, hey, they come from working in the cloud, where you have so much more flexibility than in your legacy data centers. So it will reduce downtime, it will reduce maintenance, so it will reduce cost. You have your flexibility. If you find out through a user survey that orange is a more popular color than blue, then you just paint your website orange instead of blue, and in no time you can deploy that. So to improve the touch and feel of your customer-facing applications, that is, I think, very beneficial. And then it has to be, of course, intuitive and easy to use. As I said, nobody ever took a training for Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp, so people should not have to follow a training to transfer money through a banking app. It must be made very, very simple and very, very tasteful in the same time. So I have exactly 3 minutes left according to my clock, so I hope you listened fast enough. I spoke a little bit faster than I planned to do. That's my fault, but I hope it wasn't too fast. Yeah, Jeroen, I gave it back to you now because I am done here. I will see some questions pop in later probably. I think we do a coffee break somewhere and do some intermediate questions. That's just my question.
It's going to be, the Q&A is at the end of the session, but of course there's a live Q&A in the event panel where you on the right side can add questions as sorry, visitors. By the way, I really liked what you did there with the elevator pitch. I'm going to remember that one. I'll leave it to Jasper to slide in a little joke of words. Awesome. Yeah, I find it very interesting to see indeed differences in the apps for modern banking and or what we still see out there. Do you think that's really something that is typical for regional banks, that they leave that on the table, that there's much to gain there, or is it worldwide? How do you would compare it with the region?
That's a question for me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, but I'm not sure. That's why I started with the picture of the lines. You know, that is something regional. I've seen that. I mean, you and I, we both have traveled throughout the Caribbean, so we have been everywhere, and it happens. At the utility companies, people stand in line to pay their bill. That means they do not do online banking.
Right, so it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing, I feel, because if you would not get the trust from an app where you would find your customers' trust, you will not go beyond that point where customers will no longer be in line but do their banking via the mobile app.
Exactly. So it has something to do with trust, and also the thing with you need with a blue pen, a stamp, and a signature on your invoice.
Yeah. So that's what you mentioned. It's going to take time, but the message in your presentation is, people, just please make sure that whatever you present online to your customers, it is a trustworthy and looks appealing and professional, so that you will slowly eventually get your customers to move from standing in line to, hey, do your own banking online via a mobile app. Good, great stuff. Thanks so much. So that question and answer again, people. The end of the day or the morning, I should say. There's a Q&A space. Will be all online. So gather your thoughts and write down your questions. You can write them in the live event, or you can open when we open for questions, you can post them then, and then we'll address those. I'm moving on to the next speaker. As I mentioned earlier in my intro, the security component is imperative, obviously. Previous speaker, Jasper, was addressing how you present to your customers. But obviously, you as IT responsible or stakeholder in your organization get a lot of concerns internally about, okay, how secure is this? Why and what can we move to cloud? And tell me more about security. And then you'll open a broad spectrum of all kinds of facets of what is security in that standpoint. So title of the next presentation, what I also mentioned in my intro, Zero Trust. So how are you building zero trust in your organization? I'm introducing Dalean. He is my colleague from Jamaica, and he will be addressing this particular topic, building zero trust into your organization. Dalean, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Hi. Thank you, Jeroen. Hi, everyone. I am Dalean Barnett, and in this section of the presentation, I'll be taking you through building zero trust in your organization. Can I get a confirmation if my audio and my video is fine?
It is from my side, Dalean. You can proceed.
Okay, perfect. All right. So before I jump down the rabbit hole of what zero trust is and exactly how we do the implementation, let's first take a look at the current state of affairs. So traditionally, we rely on perimeter security, and that simply means we try to secure the resources inside our physical premises, right? So we have a data center on-prem, we have a couple servers, some databases, storage, you know, all that jazz, the whole 9 yards inside there. We have our users, we have our data, and we try to protect that, right? And we inherently trust all devices and all accounts meaning users here. We trust everyone, right? So once they're in our perimeter network, we essentially trust them. So we do no verification to say, hey, should you be granted access to this? Or, well, nor do we actually do any sort of deep check. So in all fairness, I think this approach is a bit naive, given that we have multiple data points now. So it's not just about having a single file server that all our users look to. We have a lot of online services that we consume, and a lot of them are third party. So it's not something that we own, right? So that is how we currently protect our resources. So there are a few limitations of this approach. So banks are normally banks are normally dispersed, right? They have dispersed networks and data and users and partners. You know, I do know that banks collaborate a lot, you know, with a lot of third party, whether that's an insurance company or a couple of friends on a document, you know, you name it. And the current approach makes it increasingly difficult to keep track of what's happening and to secure our data, right? So what if we have a compromised user inside our data center? How do we now detect and remediate that, right? How do we go about ensuring that the blast radius of that compromised user is minimized and it doesn't affect all the other users or all the other services that we have inside our data center? How do we assess the current security of our IT landscape, right? How do we detect compromised systems? How do we assess access control? You know, so these are some of the questions that I think we should be asking ourselves. And this is exactly where Zero Trust comes in. So then you may be asking, okay, then Dalean, I hear you. I agree, right? I know that my bank has a couple of these problems. So what exactly is Zero Trust? So as Jasper mentioned in his presentation, the main tenet of Zero Trust is trusting no one. Doesn't matter who you are. So are you the CIO? Are you the CEO of the bank? I don't really care, right? It's Zero Trust. We're not going to trust you unless we verify identity. So instead of blindly granting access, we ask, who are you and what do you want? And only then, if you are deemed to be validated, right, then that's the only time when in which you get access, right? So I think it's a fair assumption to say that the main point of Zero Trust is identity, which is our users, right? And the main objective of Zero Trust is to increase our security posture, right? So if I was to, make that explanation a bit verbose, so instead of saying, okay, then Zero Trust is trusting no one, I would say Zero Trust is putting identity at the forefront and strengthening our security posture. All right. So you may be asking yourself at this point again, what's in it for me? So right now I'm really happy with the state of affairs, regardless of the many vulnerabilities lurking around. So why should I even consider this? So when you look at security, I think not having proper security in place has two implications, right? So it has an implication on the business side, right? So meaning that some of the initiatives that you'd want to put into place, because you are constantly thinking in the back of your mind to say, hey, maybe if I grant access to this data, or if I allow these users to work from home, then this will open up a security hole in our organization. And that's completely fine. I really hope that that's the manner in which you are actually thinking about it. But I think there's another way in which we can actually have a level playing field, right? And the next benefit of security, of Zero Trust, I think is that it really helps to strengthen that security posture, right? So if we should go back to the example of a bank having a dispersed network, this can mean a bank being a multinational organization, or a bank having multiple branches within the same country or state, right? And I coined this term, I hope I was the first one, digital geographic agility. And what that means is that regardless of where your users sit, regardless of where your data sit, you can ensure that you are agile, right? So you can take on the initiatives that you want to without exposing your organization to security breaches, right? I'm sure no one here would want to be on the news about a data breach or anything like that. That's not cool, right? And I think once the proper security measures are in place and you're confident, then you can increase collaboration with your stakeholders, right? And of course, without the added, I wouldn't say benefit, but without the added complexity of managing those collaboration efforts and remote workforces. And I think the last benefit here for you, well, in this slide, was certainly not the last on the long list, but you can streamline and modernize your security and compliance. So I know the banking industry is highly regulated. You have to conform to many strict rules, and for very good purpose. I mean, you essentially hold the keys to the kingdom. Money makes the world go around. So it is definitely expected that you do everything within your powers to ensure that your customers' data is secure, right? So you may be asking yourself, okay, Mr. Inova guy, so how can you help us? And that is exactly the section in which I'm going to go into now. So I just want to turn your attention to the little graph here, and just go through a very small explanation. So we have signals, right? And signals in this case can be your users trying to sign in, a device trying to access data, a risk, right? So it can be the system telling that, hey, I think someone entered their password 10 times incorrect. It can be applications trying to access data. So how now do you essentially take all these signals and make sense of it? So this is a lot of data, right? How do you actually apply heuristics? How do you analyze this data in real time to say, okay, then I think I should give access, or I should deny access, or I should require a second factor of authentication just to make sure? That's a really hard question. And I think that's not something that many banks can achieve on their own, right? So let's go to the next slide. So right now I'm going into the 3 pillars of zero trust. So the first thing is identity and authentication. So as I mentioned before, identity, it's very critical that we get that part right, because the entry point in our network for a cyber criminal is always going to be a user account, or maybe 90% of the time it's going to be some sort of credential being leaked, right? So we have to ensure that our users or service accounts are protected, right? And first and foremost, we need to ensure that users say and prove that they are who they say they are. And Azure Active Directory or Azure AD is a really good product that can essentially help you to achieve that. We can also use Azure AD's SSO feature. SSO means single sign-on. And what that allows you to do is to say, okay, then you have multiple services, right, that users authenticate to. Instead of requiring them to create a separate username and a password for each service, you can manage all of those within Azure AD. So that means, let's say a security breach happens, once you shut down that one account, then essentially that account is shut off from everything else. And you would need to be scrambling to say, hey, I think this user had 20 credentials. We just need to go in and we just need to disable all of them. No, once you disable that one Azure AD account, then everything else gets shut down, right? We can also take this a bit further and enable multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication is essentially requiring a user to give something that they know, right? So let's say a password, and give something that they also have. So this can be, let's say, accepting an authentication request on your phone, or accepting a call, right? So even if that user account should be compromised, then that compromised account would still need to go through a second factor, which makes it increasingly more difficult for the attackers to get in, right? So identity and authentication, a big thing. All right, and we're not done yet, right? So Azure AD conditional access, really, I think this is a really good service. What this essentially does is it helps to apply access policies for requests. So let's say COVID is here, right? And I mean, it's a real bummer, I must admit. And let's say you wanted users to be able to work from home now, and you gave users some devices. You have a user who is home, and you gave them a company issued device. However, that user decided that, okay, then I'm not going to use that company issued device. I'm going to work from my personal laptop, okay, because that's what I want to do. IT is not here to monitor me, so I can do what I want to do. So Azure AD conditional access can essentially detect the condition of that authentication request. So let's say that user now goes onto their personal machine. You can now say, hey, is this user coming from a trusted device, meaning a device that we issued them? If that device passes that condition, then it is granted access to access your email, your line of business applications, files stored in OneDrive, etc. However, if that authentication request failed that condition, then the user will be denied access. So now you'd need to go all around the moon and go to Japan and back, just to try to ensure that users are adhering to the policies that your organization would have put in place, right? And that's just one example. We have about a dozen other conditions that we can check for, so you can get really granular here. Microsoft Endpoint Manager, I mean, it really isn't a core functionality of Azure AD, but it integrates seamlessly. And what this does is to help you to configure your endpoints. So for the Microsoft shops out there, I know that Active Directory is a product that we all know and love. However, we must admit it has some limitations, especially when we have users working outside of the office walls. So group policies, stuff like that, we have a challenge deploying policies to remote devices. So the Endpoint Manager allows us to mitigate that. So we can define our policies, and regardless of where that device is, the policies can be applied, right? So that can be a compliance policy to say, okay, then look, this device drive must be encrypted, right? If not, then this device is going to be marked as uncompliant. And of course, you can set up various rules on how to deal with that. Configuration policies, of course, you can do a lot with that as well. So Microsoft Endpoint Manager aims to help you to manage those endpoint devices. So whether that's your Windows 10 machine, that's your Mac OS, your iPhones, your Android devices, you name it. All right. So on to the next pillar, right? So we just looked at identity and authentication. We're at threat protection now, and Microsoft 365 Defender. It really helps us to bolster our security and increase our ability to protect, detect, and respond to attacks, right? Because I mean, we could invest as much as we want into these security products. However, if they don't give us a way on how to detect the threats as they happen, then it really makes no sense. Because if we can't detect, then we can't respond, right? So Microsoft 365 Defender really helps us to do that. And this is integrated seamlessly with the platform. So you can, integrate this into your endpoint devices with the Windows Defender, right? So that's your antivirus, and that definitely integrates with the Microsoft 365 Defender seamlessly. We can look at our emails, so we have advanced threat protection for emails as well. OneDrive, SharePoint, and of course, these can be extended to your line of business applications, right? And the last pillar is information protection. So we did everything to protect our services. We did everything to protect our users, right? But what if a critical piece of information gets exposed, right? Security isn't that easy. So we could implement everything right here. There still exists a chance for some data to get out. And I think that's where most of the challenge has been, right? So we did everything to ensure that our perimeter is secure. Now we hear about zero trust. We went and ensured that, okay, then our identity and authentication procedure was set up properly. We had really good threat protection, which are essentially things that are happening now. But how about a piece of document containing customer addresses or customer credit card numbers being exposed? How do we actually protect against stuff like that? That's where information protection comes in. So as mentioned, while identities and devices and stuff like that are the main vectors, right, for attacks, data is really what these cyber criminals want, right? And this is where Azure puts the last piece of that puzzle in. With Azure Information Protection, you can essentially protect that data anywhere it lives, right? So if your data, meaning you created it, you applied a policy, you tagged it, ends up in a Dropbox account somewhere in Russia, you can protect that, right? So thank you. I think that's the end of my presentation. I hope you did get something from here. I'm going to hand back over to Jeroen.
Thanks, Dalean. I see that you're, because of your more technical content, already got some people to start asking questions, which is great. So to all the attendees, just if you have technical level questions, for instance, about some of these features in Azure or in Microsoft 365, information protection or identity protection and what have you, please put them in the Q&A section and then we'll address them shortly. Right now we're going to be listening to a customer of Inova. We've invited Laura Padilla to share some of her experiences as a user. Laura is IT team leader at CMET. Laura, we've never met. I'm not frequently in Puerto Rico. Actually, I've only been there twice, I think. That's not part of my territory. You work with my colleagues over there, like Victor and Nestor, which is great. I do appreciate a lot you sharing some of your experiences here in our event. I'm sure you'll do a bit of an introduction yourself, but for everybody, CMET is a liability insurance organization in Puerto Rico for the medical and hospital industry. So ensuring liabilities of doctors and physicians on the island. And Laura is IT team leader. So also customer of Inova and making use of our portal, for which I am very grateful and proud of. So if you could share a little bit of how that experience was, besides your experiences in your cloud journey as a whole and as a financial organization, what considerations CMET had in the transition, what internal perhaps blockers or how the approach of security and moving workloads to the cloud was addressed internally. I'm very curious to learn about your story. Laura, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm thinking the rest can then.
Turn on my camera. Oops, hold on. Okay. So as
you may share if you have a presentation, you may share it.
no, I'm just gonna. Can you all see me? Okay.
I can see you, but I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay, she's on screen. Great. All right, go ahead.
Okay. So yes, as I said, my name is Laura Padilla, and I'm the IT business partner at CMET in Puerto Rico. CMET is a professional liability insurance company, and we've been in this business for about 30 years. We're a local company and very small. We're just like around 40 employees with one office. So we insured doctors and hospitals for their professional liability malpractice. So that being said, we have to comply with what is known as HIPAA and other, security rules. So we handle a lot of personal identifiable information, for my customers. And so when we started working with Inova, our first concern was actually our security. So what we did is we started with an assessment of all our configuration with Office 365, OneDrive, etc. So Inova helped us do this assessment and identify the areas where we needed to improve our security. So they came up with the recommendations, and then we worked with them in a project to implement those recommendations. So for example, we implemented our data loss protection rules for our emails, where we have, when certain types of information are identified in the email, they're automatically encrypted. For example, if there's a social security number or a credit card number or any of that sensitive information, then the rule automatically encrypts it. So, and that's one of the things that we needed to be able to comply, for example, with EPA when we transfer files that are confidential or sensitive. So that being said, well, we also worked with our advanced threat protection settings that I know that were mentioned before. So we have rules to detect when we have malicious attachments or malicious links. So the advanced threat protection goes through those and filters them out. And we have rules, you know, to say what to do with those attachments or those links. And we also worked with the mobile device management that I know that was also mentioned in the previous presentation by implementing, installing Intune in our devices. So for example, we have corporate mobile devices that they can install Teams or Outlook or any of the Office 365 applications, but we require for them to have Intune installed so we can have some type of policies applied to those devices. So, for example, we have to require that they're encrypted, that they have passwords, that they have a second password when they're going to enter Teams or Outlook. And for example, a regular employee that has their own device cannot access. We don't allow them to access these applications from their devices. So we only allow corporate devices with Intune installed in them, so we can have that control, so we can do the remote swipes in case there's, you know, they're stolen or misplaced. So that's how we control that part of our security. And also talking a little bit about the cloud. So one of the projects that we worked with in Inova was we were looking for a way to make our interactions with our vendors easier. So for example, we interact with our agents, which are the ones, you know, that are selling our products. But we also have a team of law firms and lawyers that work with our claims. So a lot of the exchange with them, we have to exchange a lot of documents pertaining to claims, documents that are sensitive, and legal documents. And before, we were just using either emails or maybe sending them a OneDrive link that they had to download. And we ran into a lot of problems because it wasn't that simple, or maybe they received an encrypted email and they weren't sure how to open it and decrypt it. So in doing this analysis, we came up with the idea to use Teams for that. So we've been working on that project for about a year, and it's finally in production, and it took us a while. And one of the hurdles was the customer itself having to make that switch from working with the conventional tools like email or maybe even physical files to doing everything digitally and just using Teams for, you know, all the exchange and communications. But we worked slowly, and Inova helped us even train all these users to use Teams, and it's been working great. And they also helped us come up with the right structure for the documents that we were going to exchange. So that was one successful project that we worked on this past year. And with the onset of the pandemic and the remote work, needless to say, we basically have adopted Teams through all the company. And I can say that it is right now it's the preferred method of communication between us. So it helped us transition basically seamlessly from the office to the remote work environment, because we have our meetings, we call each other, we chat, we exchange files, we collaborate. So it's made everything easier for us. And that we already were working with Teams when this started. So that helped a lot. Now, also with the pandemic, we found that some of our processes have needed to change from being physical to going digital or automating some of those processes. So one of the projects that we worked with in Inova was a Power app for our indemnity checks. This was a process that was done at the office, and it was basically done in paper, where everything, you know, so the adjuster would send the papers to the manager would look at them, sign them, send them over to accounting. So when we had to transition to the remote work, we started doing everything by emails. But doing it by email wasn't enough, because we didn't have a trail of what was going on, or we didn't have the approvals that we needed to have. So if an auditor came and wanted to check this process, we could show them, you know, this was approved by this person, and then it was sent to the other person, and so on. So we started with a proof of concept and with using Power Apps, and we liked what we saw. So we worked with Nestor and someone others of Inova to implement this new project. So now we have an automated process for indemnity checks, which is working great. And with that project, and since we liked the outcome of it, now we're working on other second phase of the same project to do the same thing with other processes, to automate them using this tool. So our experience has been great with Inova. They've always been there to help us. They've been very responsible, and their expertise has been a key for the success of all these projects. They help us, you know, from the requirements, from the brainstorming at the beginning, coming up with the concept, and then implementing it. So I'm really happy to have them as business partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Those were very kind words. Appreciate it. Can I ask you a question? You mentioned a lot of additional steps in cloud, in the digital cloud journey. You mentioned that you already were using Teams before this all happened. With this all, you probably mean the pandemic, right? Were that the first steps in cloud for CMED? Teams, that is? Yes.
I mean, we were using it. Probably not as widely company-wide as we are now, but we already had the knowledge because we had been working with the project with the law firms.
Right.
So that helped us. I mean, as soon as the pandemic hit, to make the decision, Teams is what we're going to use. So we didn't even think about anything else but Teams at that point. And the transition was very smooth. So
before that, were you
train the rest of the employees, but it was, I would say it was a very seamless process.
But so when, let's say 2019, where would you say your level of cloud adoption was back then?
I mean, we were using Office 365 and maybe OneDrive, a little bit of SharePoint, but it was not as wide as now with the pandemic that we have adopted all those technologies. Yes.
So you're saying there was some initial cloud adoption before the pandemic, but the pandemic really accelerated the further adoption of additional features.
Yes.
And it's interesting how to see from, the such a crisis, you still were able to adopt and to shift gears, as I say it, then to adopt quicker or transition faster into cloud. Were there any concerns from a business level that needed to be addressed in terms of perhaps the security or business cases, or how did CMED approach that process?
Yes, security is always our concern because we deal, with sensitive information. So we did have an additional assessment after we moved to remotely working to make sure that we were following the best practices with Teams and with all the other tools like OneDrive. And so we did do that, and we adjusted a little bit, our rules where we needed to. So, and it's, for us, security is always a priority. So if I had to, give my advice to anyone out there, is that always have budget available for security, because there's never too much that you can do with security. So we're always going to need an assessment or a penetration test, a vulnerability test, or maybe
right. You do frequent assessments, audits?
Yeah, well, I try to do at least one penetration test a year. I'm moving down to 2 now. This past year we did 2. So, and I think I'm going to stick with doing, one every 6 months approximately.
Okay.
But we've also, we implemented the advanced threat protection for the emails. We made sure that all those rules were correctly implemented. And I think that's where having Inova as a business partner, comes in as the added value, because you just not only sell us the licenses, so you help us implement them and make it right. Because maybe, we could have gone there, configured some rules, but we didn't have the expertise. So they were wrong. So, and I appreciate that part of our business relation.
That's good to hear. Good to hear. Thank you. So I had an additional question. Now it slipped me. If you, nope, don't have it anymore. So it's fine. Perhaps it comes back later. Yeah, thank you, Laura. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I want to then move on to the next presenter, I suppose. Our next presenter will be Laycya from Jamaica. Laycya Holmes is my colleague in Jamaica. My peer, she's kind of in a more or less the same role. And she will be addressing what your internal users will be, how your internal user adoption will look like in a cloud or cloud journey, if you will. So if your users, and particularly during these times, are adopting to new technology, cloud technology, and particularly now working from home, what is then the common denominator that they will be faced with, and how would you approach that? Laycya, if you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate that intro. So thank you everybody for allowing me to do this presentation. I'm Laycya Holmes Graham, and I'm the country manager for Inova Solutions Jamaica. I've been in information technology for a little over 12 years, and it's been an exciting journey. And what I want to talk about today is really some of the intangibles of how we look at how the technology can be used in this new norm that we have. So I'll touch a little bit on the business side, but I'm going to touch a little technical side. I won't get too deep into it based on the audience, of course, but we'll have a conversation about what it is that we need to be looking at from a user behavior perspective pre-COVID. What are the opportunities that we have from a Microsoft 365 perspective now? And then what is the new mindset that we should be administering or helping our employees to transition to, not only from a leadership perspective, but all across the organization? Everybody's able to see me fine, hear me fine, we're good. Presentation being seen. I presume yes. All right, so I'm going to continue. So one of the first things that we need to look at is the risk of what happens when it is that a financial institution experiences some form of attack. I personally have the privilege of having my mother-in-law work at Scotiabank, and my father actually works at the largest institution of one of the Jamaican financial companies here. And what I find from their experience in pre-COVID is that the experience in banking was more of a brick and mortar setup. So the idea was that persons are physically required to come into the office. Everybody has to get there by 8 o'clock. Everybody has to log in their chip or card or sign a physical book. And when it is that financial institutions are attacked, when we really look at it, when we investigate what has happened, persons would have been in the environment, that's the threat itself, for over 5 months. While I was working at Microsoft, we had this saying where that person or that individual or the threat itself would have been in the environment for over 260 days, which would have been more than half a year, right? So let's look at a scenario that we had recently, and this actually happened on the cusp of the corona pandemic here in Jamaica. Literally the day after, that's when it is that the country would have had a full and total lockdown. Schools were closed, most financial institutions were closed, and most institutions that were customer facing were closed on March the 15th. So at approximately 1:45 a.m. in the morning, the Jamaica National Bank experienced a financial breach. And what happened to them was for about 3 or 5 days, their customers were unable to access their accounts. And so what happened was that they weren't able to do any form of transactions or anything like that. Now, while it is that the entity did not have a financial fallout from a perspective of their banking system being offline, there was still significant customer fallout because of the inability to serve their customers during those number of days. And so what happened was they actually had to provide a waiver of fees to their customers, and they provided them that on the 21st of March in order to have some goodwill with their customers. So I think it's very important for us to, as entities from a trusted advisor perspective, working with you as financial institutions, for us to look at how it is that we can assist you with educating your employees on how we can become more aware and sensitive to cyber threats, challenges that may be experienced in the environment, and how we move from that perspective. So because of the fact that now, pre-COVID, yes, persons would have been coming into the bank physically, but now a lot of persons who are not customer facing from a financial institution standpoint, persons in compliance, persons who are not tellers or customer service representatives and etc. In financial institutions actually work from home. So for example, my mother-in-law, she works in a particular division at Scotiabank, and she has been working from home since March. She has not had to come into the office. And what they have decided to do is physically, they have stripped down the banks, and they have decided now to convert some of the financial institution locations or branches to more of a digitized bank. And so what we're finding now is that there's more of a risk associated with how it is that persons can access confidential content associated with financial institutions. The Bank of Jamaica is our customer here locally, and so we have a very good understanding of the type of regulations that are required from a financial services perspective, especially when it comes to the management of customer data. And so because of the fact that we have this ability, this network of accessibility around how you can access data, how you can serve as an employee in the environment, there's more risk there. And so because of that, there has to be a lot more education with employees about how to work in their environment with that classified information. As Laura mentioned earlier, that personable, identifiable information that needs to be kept confidential. And because of the fact that in the environment now, a lot of persons are working with their children, they're working with their spouses, they're working with different persons, there is so much more to consider in this new norm. So what does that mean? The challenges that we have in this complex environment is we're dealing with data leakage, device loss, compromised integrity, and stolen credentials. In the scenario that I mentioned for the Jamaica National Bank, which is public knowledge, they highlighted that the credentials for a particular employee was compromised. So that would have been a stolen credential scenario there, right? So as we move ahead and we're looking to see what is it that we can do to ensure that we're helping our employees and we're helping the institution to become more understanding of what the new normal is, we need to leverage the technologies that allow persons to be ubiquitous, allow persons to utilize the technology without feeling trapped. Okay, we have to log into VPN, so forth and so on. If you notice before, Dalean would have highlighted single sign-on. So not having to log into multiple different applications to do what I need to do as an employee. Having to remember all of those things makes it very, very difficult. And also persons will have to find other technologies to store passwords, etc. So using the technology that we have, which is the Microsoft 365 technology, which we're recommending, can assist with how we engage and transition employees into this new normal. So I want to talk about the sensitivity and moving along the life cycle of a file. So I think it's very important to highlight this in terms of communicating to your employees about how data is created and how it moves across. A lot of the times when it is that there is a breach or there is data that is sent accidentally, usually there is a bit of a challenge where the user is concerned in terms of their understanding about how the data moves across and how the data can be protected. So using the M365 technology, there is a way for us to classify that data, right? There is a way for us to encrypt that data. There is a way for us to protect that data. And so what we want to do was we want to ensure that our employees understand this and are able to take the power into their own hands in terms of ensuring that customer data, personable identifiable information is protected, or data that can link understanding personal information associated with their customers won't be able to be done, right? So the first thing is the data is created and it can be accessible across different platforms. It's detected. Then what you can do is the data can be classified and labeled. So I'm going to get into what that looks like just at a high level, not too technical. And then the data can be protected based on a policy. After that, it travels again, and while it travels, it's encrypted, meaning that it can't be accessed by any and anyone. And then that same data can be monitored as well by persons who manage information technology in your financial institution. So one of the, I think, so for example, there is a financial entity here that had I wouldn't say it was a breach, I would say it was an accidental data loss incident. And that one was public as well, where a particular employee would have sent customer data to the wrong set of individuals. And so what happened was personable identifiable information was shared there. As I mentioned before, what can be done is as employees are working with the technology and the data that they have, they are able to classify it based on the information that is inside the document that they're working with. Now, from my experience, most financial institutions, most employees, unless they're on the customer service side, most of them work in Excel, or they're working some form of word processing or heavy data processing environment. And so that means that they're working with credit card information, account information, names, TRNs, etc. Now, what makes the classification of a breach is if I'm able to identify somebody's information and connect the dots. So I'm able to connect that this is the person's TRN, this is their account number, this is their account balance, etc. That's something that we don't want to have happen. So what can take place is in the engagement of our employees and the training, which Inova offers as well, is we can educate the employees to understand that once you're working with this type of information, which is predominantly the case, the information should be classified as confidential, right? And also what happens with the M365 platform is, depending on how it's configured, it can also pick up automatically when there is credit card information. Now, it's a little different, of course, naturally, because we're in the Caribbean. Different countries have different identifications for individuals, so it might not pick up a TRN in Jamaica, etc. But if it's configured in that way, then most certainly it can do that as well. So if you notice, sensitive data is automatically detected, and then the idea is to move to label the document as confidential. Now, what does that mean? That means that the document can't be accessed by any and anyone, And for example, if it is accidentally sent to someone else, they won't be able to open it if it is that they are external to the financial institution, etc. So these are some of the opportunities that we have with the M365 platform that we can continue to discuss with you as we move forward. So the sensitivity labeling of the documentation is critical. And I think this is one of the cornerstones and pillars of the use of the M365 platform, because in particular in the Caribbean, and specifically in Jamaica, I find that most of the challenges that are experienced or that are shared publicly are typically data loss prevention or stolen credentials. So if we're labeling and we're providing intelligence associated with that personable identifiable information, then it will be easier for us to manage dealing with that, with those challenges. So how can we simplify the security landscape? Now, as I mentioned, I don't want to get too much into the technical, but what I will say is that the M365 platform provides you with identity and access management, threat protection, information protection, and unified endpoint management. What this allows you to do is it allows you to have a protect, detect, and respond circular view of how it is that you manage dealing with this new normal. The reality of the situation that we have now, especially because we're dealing with financial services here, is that a lot of your staff are interacting with your customers with platforms outside of the technologies that you have given them. Some of them are communicating to their customers via WhatsApp and constantly doing that. So for example, on Sunday, my sister-in-law would have shared with me that a credit union would have messaged her on Sunday on WhatsApp to verify account information. Now, typically, financial institutions don't do that, but you find that employees may be doing those things because it's easier to communicate with their customers in that way. Now, how you can prevent things like that or work with your employees is to ensure that they have the tools that allow them to do that, and then you have the tools to detect when things like that are taking place, right? So I wanted to also share that the M365 platform, it replaces all of these items that you see here on the screen. Now, a number of financial institutions, from my experience, take the time to buy one of those items at a time, but the M365 platform provides all of that. So it's an opportunity for us to work with you to see how we can either replace some of what you already have or enhance some of what we already have, and then we can take it from there. And I wanted to also share the Gartner view in terms of the security platform and where Microsoft stands. I think we're sharing the presentations, but definitely Microsoft is a leader in all these areas. I know that especially in Jamaica, financial institutions leverage Gartner in terms of how they move forward with the technology. So I'm just sharing this so that you can have an understanding that Microsoft is seen as a secure platform when it comes to access management, endpoint protection, etc. So I wanted to move forward and just highlight the fact that the M365 platform allows you to integrate that view of productivity, communication, and security. It's a secure modern workplace platform. So I highly recommend that not only looking at the technology that you're providing to your employees, it's also providing the training that is needed and the adoption that is needed so that your employees are comfortable when it is that they're working with their customers, when it is that they're working internally with each other. I'm really glad that Laura was able to come on and share her experience with Microsoft Teams. You can even have situations where persons interact with customers via that platform as well. And that way, the content that is shared in a secure way, and you have no concern about compliance and regulatory issues in relation to customer data being accessible outside, right? So it's very important for us to look and see how we can work with you in that vein, how we can continue to build on the tools that you currently have, and look at how the Microsoft platform can continue to grow and convert the cultural mindset that you're working on with your employees. Right now, most employees are juggling between the work-life balance of being at home and going on the road, etc. So providing them with the tools and the technology that allows them to be able to do work at any place that they need to. Once it has a stable internet connection, it's quiet enough, and it's secure, then they can move ahead to serve the customers as they need to. All right, so I think that's it from my side. Are there any questions for me?
Laycya, quick question. Just from curiosity standpoint, how things are in Jamaica, because you were giving some examples where people would now have to adopt to working remote.
Yes.
I read this in international sites and magazines and thought leaders that saying that the remote work situation is here to stay. Do you experience that do you get that feedback in Jamaica that companies think that their employees and that they will have a permanent remote work situation to some extent?
That's a very good question, Jay. And I would say that it depends on the industry. So what I'm finding is, for example, for organizations like ourselves, for IT industry companies, absolutely. Most of us are 90, 80 to 100% remote work. While for financial institutions, you'll probably have a 50, 60%, simply because of the fact that there are some they have a branch network, so they have to have employees come into office physically because their customer base, especially the older customer base, and then of course the fact that people still have to come in and physically deal with like checks, managers checks, etc. That has to be done. Then when you look at manufacturing now, of course, naturally, manufacturing can't be 100% remote. You have to have, from an operations perspective, persons coming in. So while you have persons in legal, procurement, accounting, etc., those persons can work from home, but the rest have to be physically in office. Then when you look at utilities now, so for example, JPS, who is our customer, and NWC, soon to be, they have their persons physically on site. They have to go into work. So my husband works in power. He goes to work every single day. He's an essential service worker. But then you have persons who work on the support system side. They can work from home. Here to stay, I would say predominantly yes, for the employees that are able to do so. But definitely what I would say from a human resources perspective, there was a bit of a fight where certain customers from a maturity perspective weren't necessarily ready to let their employees work from home because of the trust associated with productivity. But what employers are finding now is that when they're able to work with their employees and have that open and honest conversation about what works for them, they've seen productivity increase for employees that do work from home.
Right. I think it's also a paradigm shift where you would not measure the productivity of your employee by the time he checks in and the time he checks out, or he or she.
Exactly.
But let's start measuring on other KPIs. And that is a shift that will take place over time. It takes time. Right, Laycya, thank you so much for your insights. Yeah, I'm excited to see that we are now at a point in the event where we will do some testing of knowledge of our attendees. And I'm going to give the floor to our quiz master for that particular event, which is a Q&A. Sorry, not a Q&A. It's a pop quiz where we will put some questions on, and you're allowed or able to answer those. And to present all that quiz environment, that is Adriana's role. Adriana, I see that you already put up the QR code. Please explain us what we are going to do.
Hi, Jeroen. Thank you for introducing. So my name is Adriana. I think you all know me by because I've been sending you the invites and the reminders. So I'm happy to have you here. So as we already did an announcement, hey, get your mobile because you have to scan this code. It will pop up in a web browser, the one as default in your mobile. They will ask you for a code. So on the screen, I hope that you all see my screen, you will see the code in your screen. So if you add that PIN code to your screen, which is 753841, you will be able to enter our quiz. So yes, I'm excited to see all the knowledgeable attendees that we have this morning and to see how good they paid attention. I know it's a virtual event and it's very challenging to be focused. So that's why in the beginning we advise you to, hey, take notes because we'll be asking some things. So I'll be sharing. Let me see in the chat. Please let me know if you are if you're ready to start. I'm gonna give a couple of more seconds so people can join. I hope you are enjoying this event so far. I see that we have a couple of persons joining. You can see my screen, and then if you see your name popping up, I see that we have some anonymous visitors, which is okay. So I'm giving it just a little bit of more. I like the bazooka. So we're so creative this morning. Yes, as I was saying, I hope that you guys enjoyed all the content that we have delivered this morning. The Q&A will be our next topic, so you can start putting your questions in the chat. You see a question mark in your chat box. There is where you can add your questions. We'll be answering them shortly when we are finalized with our quiz and our small survey, which I really hope you participate in. So let me see, got a couple of more people that's joining. So if you can, in the chat, maybe give me a red a sign of, hey, I'm already there. Or wait for me. If not, I will start hitting the start button. I have Ma, Alan, and attendee Sandra, Bazooka, and Paul. Ooh, I see the Wiz just joined. Nice. So I'm going to share this QR code really quick for the persons that didn't got to see it. So what you want to do is take your mobile and scan this code with your camera. I hope you have a modern phone because it automatically, if you scan it with your camera, it automatically opens up. I'm hearing some pop-ups, so I'm going back to the initial screen of the game, and I'm going to start the game. So good luck, everyone. You will see some answers on your mobile and the questions and the answers on your mobile. All right. Okay. I'm ready. Are you guys ready? Let's start. Yes, everyone. We give 15 more seconds and then we will close this game. But I think we have a winner already, how I see it. 15 more seconds. Ma, I'm not sure who Ma is, but you're at 0. Right. Yes, we are ending this. Thank you so much, everyone who joined. I see that the third prize, Teddy Bear, won the third prize. Congratulations. The second one was Alan. Alan, you had 83% with correct answers. And then the ultimate winner is an attendee. Good that we didn't raffle the latest PlayStation 5 because, hey, that would be a pity, yeah? Who is the attendee? But okay, next, I thank you all for joining, for participating in this quiz. We have we have a survey, a small survey that I will wish that you will fill in. It's the same method with your mobile. You can scan the QR code. We will be raffling a surprise giveaway. This will be in your thank you email that you receive after this event. So please use your mobile, scan this QR code, and fill in this survey. It's very important for us to understand, hey, if you're delivering the content that you were expecting to receive, if you are having the correct timing, if anything that you give as a comment will help us for future events, which is very important for us because we want to resonate with our audiences. And during this, during this new virtual experiences, it's nice to understand how do you experience this. It takes you about 3 minutes to fill in. Again, I'm going to check my Q&A, the chat. If you have questions, please type it in the chat box, because at the end, after this survey moment, we will be going to our Q&A session. I'm going to give you a couple of more seconds to fill in the survey. I'm going to leave this slide here so you can scan the code if you haven't so far. And again, thank you for participating in our quiz. I hope you enjoyed that one. It was fun for me, definitely, to see who was winning. Okay, thank you for participating in our survey. We go over now to the Q&A section. Jeroen, you want to take this over? Should I continue?
I can host this, and I'll see the questions. Let's first start, and I'm checking with Marcy, but this is about the ransomware question. So that one, I think, was the first question about AD, Active Directory, Azure Active Directory. Does this solution also protect a business from ransomware? And if not, is there a separate solution to address ransomware. I don't think it's per default in the Azure AD, but I'm thinking, let me point this question to Jasper. You want to take that?
Yeah, I'm here already. I was focusing on that one.
Good.
So for it was anonymous. Sorry that I cannot talk to you directly, Mr. or Mrs. or Miss Anonymous. So I hope that after this morning you see that you need to have a more holistic approach to security. So there is, you can put another lock on your front door, and then you have like 4 locks on your front door. That's fine. But if your windows are opened and the back door is opened, then what is the use of that extra lock on the front door? So I've seen some nice slides from Dalean, where he went through the 4 pillars of security, which were identity and access and information protection and threat management. You should look at the whole of that. Is there a specific solution within the M365 suite to protect you from ransomware? No, it's a bunch of solutions, because it really depends on how that ransomware gets in there. It can get in there through an email, it can get in there through a web browser, it can get in there through an attachment in an email. There is not one specific solution, but you have to realize that in M365, the security platform is built in and not bolt on. So yes, you can, and that was a great slide from Laycya in her presentation. You can purchase a separate solution from a vendor that tries to protect you from ransomware, and that I would call that bolt on, where if you are on M365 on that platform, you have the same options, the same solution built in. And as said, there is not one door that through which ransomware gets into your organization. There is multiple doors, and probably more doors than you can imagine. So Azure AD is just the part of the fundamental part of identity protection and conditional access and stuff like that. So yes, you will need Azure AD as part of that integral built-in security solution that the M365 platform offers. So I hope that is a decent answer to your question.
I think it is. I have the following experience as well, that most people think of ransomware as a client or a user clicking on a malicious link in an email, and then particular software gets installed, and that's the end of it. Then the ransomware will be deployed and spread throughout the organization's IT and sources. But we have had an example of a customer where they would have a test server spinned up and not properly secured and not brought down after the test, and had an open admin environment on that test server. So that test server got hijacked, and from there the ransomware was deployed in the organization. So as Jasper said, it can come in via various sources and entry points. And as security from a holistic standpoint, indeed, you need to make sure that you look at security from all those angles and how to close all those holes. So that goes from identity, that goes to information protection, or how you call that, things like advanced threat protection on emails, that no malicious code comes in or can be added to an email, that kind of stuff. Thank you, Jasper, for answering that that question. Let me scroll quickly through the topics and see that. Dalean, you mentioned Microsoft Endpoint Manager. How will this solution help us manage the devices that are used at work for private matters? I am thinking you're referring to the bring your own device concept. Dalean, can you speak a bit to that topic?
All right, sure. Well, if it's the bring your own device concept, then Endpoint Manager enables information or data management. So if that device is not owned by the company, then you can just essentially put your data in a black box, put that on the device, and you manage that data. So given that the device would be a personal device, the user can still do what they need to do, access their applications, access their own data without any restrictions. However, you can now determine how that user should access your corporate data sitting on that personal device. So whether that's requiring multi-factor authentication when opening an email, or restricting a user from copying content from the corporate email and pasting it on their desktop or whatever. So in that specific scenario, then there exists options on how to manage the data itself and not the device.
All right, thank you. I hope that answers the question for the person that asked it. We do not have a lot of time, so I'm going to quickly go on to the next question. What is actually the most common way that data is being leaked in the financial sector? Who wants to address that particular point? Perhaps Frederico, are you on this call?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you repeat me the question, please?
Okay, so the question was, what is actually the most common way that data is being leaked in the financial sector? And I thought that in your experience, you may speak to that, what you've seen a lot.
Yeah, I see that many of the security incidents related to data leak is about data classification. Many banks doesn't do or doesn't know what data have, doesn't classify the data. So the knowledge of the data, who have it, where is storage, is the main reason that we have today data leaks in banking.
All right, that's a very quick answer. So you're saying that the document management and classifying the documents is imperative to prevent data leakage in the financial sector.
Yes, and something important that in the presentation of I think is the presentation from Laycya. She talked about the word picture, and when you have the endpoint, you have the information, the identity. Today, we don't need necessarily the document manager, because you can use the endpoint to classify, you can use the cloud to classify, so you can classify whatever the information is. It doesn't care that the person sent an email with the information where attached is the information is classified correctly, so you don't gonna feel or gonna be afraid that the data is leaked.
Okay, all right, thank you. So I'm going to the next question. The client base of a bank is mostly of age. That's the period where you have more money. Oh, really? So I have something to look forward to. I didn't really realize that. Great. So banks are catering their large piece, I think, of large pie of seasoned customers. How can they make this change to be relevant for the next generation? I think this ties to what Laycya has been talking about. Laycya, can you address that?
Yes, definitely. So I would say for what has been done out here, sorry about the noise in the background, what has been done out here. So for example, National Commercial Bank, when they began their digital transformation expansion or strategy as an entity from a financial services perspective about 2 to 3 years ago, they had a real challenge where that is concerned, and most of their upper echelon clients are aged. You're correct. They would have gotten lump sum pension, and some of them would have investments in stocks and so forth. So what they found is that most of those persons prefer to go into the bank because they like to interact with their personal banker, etc. So what they found was they had to help them in terms of educating them transition-wise to start to use online banking. And I found also what they interestingly did was they leveraged, for example, like their family, younger members in their family, like their children and so forth, to help them to educate their parents or maybe a younger relative to actually start using the online banking platform. And so that's one soft way. Then the hard way now was when the bank said, okay, this is the cost for you to come in to use the bank physically. And if you do it online, it's either free or it's less of a cost. So that's what I've found that financial institutions have been doing here locally. That's my comment there.
Okay, all right. I hope that answered the question. For
can I add a little bit? Can I add a little bit to that? Because I think that the statement made here is not true. I'm a blunt person, so excuse me for that. But my grandmother, well, I don't have a grandmother anymore. I'm too old for that. But the age thing, people of 60, 70, 80 years plus, they have a smartphone. They know how to use WhatsApp. They know how to do a video call with their grandchildren, especially in the last year during COVID. So they are not literally PC literacy agnostic or whatsoever. Sure, they may need a push and some help from their kids or their grandkids or whatever. But the statement that no, I'm not sure about that. If I look around, as Jeroen and I stated earlier, we used to travel a lot. If you sit in an airport, everybody of all ages are carrying a mobile phone. Everybody. So then I go back to my presentation. Make your online banking application so user friendly that it is just as simple as engaging in a WhatsApp conversation or a WhatsApp phone call or a Facebook call or whatever. Right. If you make it so simple, then the age thing is non-existent.
I concur with, and I wanted to tap into your story about the apps, how a bank is presenting himself online, particularly in mobile. But I've seen apps as well that give you an option to eliminate all the whistles and bells and just go back to the core functions of what a user wants to do, which may be very applicable to a person of age that wants to focus on only one or two functions. So that is something that you could consider if you're developing your mobile banking app, when you want to really address the persons of age and consider that they need to have a focus. All right, going to the last question. What would be the first step for my organization to start enabling cloud solutions, specifically on the security aspect? I'll address that. And it's been said and addressed as well in the presentations. And particularly they want to refer to what Laura, our client, also has been sharing. She initiated with some initial steps for teams, but at some point, really, when the decision was made to initiate cloud motion and that cloud journey, it basically all starts with an inventory. Do your assessment and help us, or let us help you do that by doing the assessment and find out what your cloud readiness is, not only in terms of technology, but also your organization, your user knowledge, and what have you. That will really give you a good starting point to identify what other gaps you first need to close, or what remediation services you first need to execute before you can even begin. We see a lot of customers that take the first baby steps and say, hey, let me just already email, let me move email to the cloud, Exchange Online, it's easy, has no impact on the users, I only need to move the mailboxes. That's very true, but at the same time, in your core infrastructure, you still need to do a lot of provisioning and build your security parameters and identity security and what have you. So before anything else, it all starts with an identification of your cloud readiness and doing an assessment. So please communicate with us about your ideas and your thoughts as to where you want to and when you want to go, so that we can have that initial conversation with you and start planning those assessments. That would be awesome. All right, I'm going to be signing off pretty soon now. Thank you, Adriana. You put up the form to subscribe to our newsletter, and I do encourage you to do so. So I'd like to really thank everybody for attending. I hope this was educational for you today and that you have some great takeaways from the presentations that you saw. I want to particularly thank Laura for sharing her experiences as a customer from Inova. I do appreciate her kind words, that she has been clearly very satisfied with the services provided. Nestor, you can take that to the bank if you want, she mentioned you. I want to thank Jasper for his presentation, as well as Frederico and Laycya, as well as Dalean. Everybody, Adriana, thank you so much, and Marcy for organizing this event, and Adriana for hosting as quiz master. Great job, everybody, thanks again. And I hope to repeat this typical type of event soon, and I hope to all see you then in the next events. Thanks so much.